I woke up this morning thinking, what on earth did I get myself into? I'll be speaking about education, and honestly for me, even when I'm standing down here, I could speak about a whole bunch of topics. But education is the one where my entire body is going into siege and survival. And I'm thinking over here, I'm walking into a landmine area itself, right, and I don't know how to begin to survive this. I think Ken Robinson had it right. Some years back, when he did this wonderful talk about how schools kill creativity, he began his entire talk by talking about the idea that education is just one of those topics where everybody has something to say, but no one wants to come onto the stage and talk about it. And it's one of those topics over here where every single one of us have, in one way or another, actually had an experience with. We've all gone to schools. We've all come to a place over here, we've had good experiences, bad experiences, and because of the fact that we have had an experience, we all have an opinion about it. And we all know, basically, for ourselves, right, what is the best way or worst way to begin to educate any one given person. And this is where I find myself at the beginning of this talk. I'm going to speak about education. But as I do so, what's going to happen is that a whole bunch of us will be going to come to a place where we go, but that's not true of my experience. That's not, something which is, the way that we can begin to do this. So I ask myself, if I'm to think deeply, ponderously, and hopefully find something meaningful to begin to share with you over the next 12 minutes or so, what could I possibly say about education that would somehow make a difference? I began my career as an educator shortly, I think, at the age of about almost 22 or so. And over the past almost 2 decades or so, in terms of running, I think, different educational facilities, teaching as a public school teacher, I had the privilege itself of a very early part of my career to set up a community service program, one itself that was looking at helping repeat students in Singapore. And we realized over here that in terms of the profile, there were roughly about 800 to 900 students that took the A-level program and they would fall through the cracks. In a sense over here that they really wouldn't do well. Not well enough to actually go to university, but well enough to get clear of this entire A-level thing. And they had to repeat that particular year. And that repeating of that year, we found itself that there was actually very little support for them. That they couldn't really pay for tuition, nor could they necessarily get counseling support, or basically maybe a conversation among a community who would begin to say that, hey, right, I did it too, and I made it. So what we did over here is we set up this program, and we began to teach them. The blessing in that particular initiative was that it was the first time in my entire career as a teacher I really began to listen to my students. Because you see, once the students began to step out of the school environment and they were not bound by rules or obligations of what was basically the norm of how I should respect my teachers, they really began themselves to sit down there and say, right, what is it they were going through? Well, say is to put it lightly, they began to bitch about what is it they were going through. And they came to a place over there where they were just talking about the ideas of that, I wish people listened to us. I wish people listened to, how I would like to learn this subject. I wish people would believe in me more. I wish I had a space to begin to share ideas and not just listen to the ideas of my teachers. And it was interesting over here because I began to listen to that. I was going, wow. Because as a teacher, I knew that listening was important. But when I began to look at basically how I spend my life, right, in terms of actually beginning to teach, I realized that I spent a lot of time over here in subject mastery. I spent a lot of time organizing my classes. I spent a lot of time doing administration, right? But if I said over here that listening was really very important, but I looked at how I began to prioritize my time, then I would call myself out to be a hypocrite. Because I spent very little time mastering or learning the art of listening. That began to take me to a journey itself of learning in the field of social emotional learning. To understand what is perhaps maybe the science or the art of how basically our bodies reflect how is it we feel, and how our emotions begin to inform how is it we think, and how our body, our mind, right, and our emotions really begin to shape the person that we are, and the person that we are for the people around us. So it's interesting because I ran this particular course just about 2 weeks back, right, as recent as that. And I was working with some of my students over there. I was just talking to themselves about the value of authenticity, right, of openness, of love. As we began talking about this over here, it was interesting because there was a parent that had lingered behind just to pick up her daughter after the entire session. And he came up to me after the end of the entire session. He came to me and says, Mr. Tong, right, My daughter herself has been in the school system for the past 16 plus years herself, and what happens is that, she's come out discouraged. She's come out to a place where she doesn't believe in herself. But she goes through your session where she comes out, excited every single day, and she wants to share ideas, and she also looks at possibilities. And says to me, Mr. Tong, you must fix the education system. Right? I said, you and me, we're going to come together itself, and we're going to do this, okay? We're going to fix the education system. We're going to tell the minister itself why basically he should change everything he's doing. And I sat down there, and I remember going, okay, I felt everything about me was wanted to walk away. But I remember I stopped and I go, let's listen. And I listened to him. And for 15 minutes, I listened to basically all his ideas and what he had to share. But I realized there were two main things that was coming out of my spirit as I began to listen. Two key things. The first thing I realized over here was that I felt more and more discouraged the more I heard about what he had to say. When he talked about it over here, he wasn't speaking about new possibilities of what we can do for our system. He was speaking in criticism of what is it we have done wrong. So I looked at it into the whole conversation. I thought, so what is the value in this conversation? Right? The value for me was I became more discouraged. The second thing I began to hear from this whole conversation was I felt that there was no space in this conversation. Right? I couldn't co-collaborate with him. I couldn't work with him in finding a new solution because what he really was doing was spending time sharing with me, right? What is it that he wanted to think or insist upon? And doing that over here, I listened to that and I go, wow, what must his students be going through? And what could his daughter be going through? Because at the end of the day, when I begin to listen to multiple students today, they always say, my parents don't listen to me. They don't. It's not just the teachers. Because when a child is growing up in education, the education is not coming from just primary to school, but it's coming from the home. And it's coming from every single adult that all our youth begin their contact with. And sometimes when they go for internships and they go for different ideas over there, the adult always says over here that, in time, people will listen to you when you become CEO of God knows what. Right? But for now, just keep quiet, right? And just learn the way the world is. I had the privilege of teaching some of my ex-students, right, in the very, very first batches, has already become teachers today. And there was one particular teacher, she shared with me, also around the same time period, to say that, she was struggling in school, that she had learned how important it was to begin to actually listen to students. But she was talking about this separate issue, where she's dealing with a colleague, and the colleagues and her herself, right, they had this working committee, and they made many promises to each other. But making of those promises, unfortunately, one of these colleagues had actually broken a promise, right? And he had not delivered upon what he had agreed upon. And my ex-student herself, right, was very angry. And she was going over here, wow, look at this man. He has no character, no conviction, right? Honestly speaking, he calls himself a teacher, right? And she was just saying over here, and she was talking about the whole idea of how, she's disappointed with the whole teaching, education system itself, the quality of teachers today. And I paused for a while and I said, dear, I really need you to forgive him. She said, for what? I said, well, it'll help the working dynamics. It comes to a place where I really think it's important to do this, right? And she says, no, I'll do it later. Right now, I've got to deal with the shit that he created, right? So we can clean this up, right? And for the longest time, I sat back there and I thought about it, and it's true. Why was it in my spirit so important for her to forgive? And I realized this. If she claims that listening is important, then what exactly is listening? Listening is the art of possibility. Let me share with you perhaps a revolutionary idea itself that I began to work through, and I began to realize more and more about what is it we have to do to begin to work with young people today. You see, when I'm having a conversation together with my wife, and let's say itself, right, we have quarrels, and we do, right? We meet and we quarrel, and sometimes my capacity to listen to her, right, is my capacity to see possibility in the reality of what is it she's trying to communicate to me. When she speaks to me, she says over here, dear, I want you to see it this, right? I can go, no, right, that's not possible. Then I'm not listening. When my student comes to me and she shares with me this radical, excited idea that she has, my capacity to listen to her is tied to my ability to see the possibility of what it is that she's saying. Because only when we as people recognize the possibility of what people are sharing with us, then do we come to a place where the other person goes, hey, you're actually listening to me. And I go, yes, I am. So with this student over here, my ex-student who's now currently a teacher, what has forgiveness got to do with this? Because in her own experience, she has not found an experience that tells her that forgiveness is valuable and possible. And because she doesn't see that as a possibility in her life, because she looks at it and says, let's deprioritize that and let's handle the task first, what I'm communicating or what I'm worried about is that she will go to her students and she will communicate exactly the same message. Because in her own life, she doesn't see possibility in the value of forgiveness. You know, we live at a different time period today, right? Our young people today are growing up, right, in an entire age of possibility. Unprecedented, right, in terms of all of human race, right? A time itself where technology, information, globalization, networks is actually opening up possibilities for us. And these young people, they're like climbing up a mountain. They move up to the top of the mountain, they go up there and they stand down there, and all these tools in their hand, they're going, wow, what an amazing view. Look at what they're doing over there in Cambodia. Look at what they're doing over there in South America. Look at what they're doing in Nigeria. Right? And they're looking at this and says, hey, why can't we do that? And these kids standing on the mountain, they're screaming down at us, hey, come and join us. Look at this exciting world out there. And all these adults at the bottom go, hey, it's dangerous. Stop climbing up. Just come down over here. So really, right, this is how the world works. And they go, no, come, take a look at the world. Right? And we say, okay, no, just follow. Just come down over here and I will show you what the world is like. And they go, okay. And they come down to our level and we show them what the world is like. This is what the world is like, dear. And they go, I see. And we go, good girl. I find such injustice in this. Because at the same time itself that we are talking about creating possibilities, I ask you, each of us, to look at basically how we live our own lives. Is it possible that we can live our own lives, right, and start to actually maybe allow for the possibilities that didn't previously happen before? Connection with your own parents. Connection of going to a bus and singing a ukulele. Because when I first watched Yan Ling's video, I was going, oh my God, she's crazy. Get down off that mountain. You foolish girl. Come down. And I was thinking about this over there. By doing this, I realized that I wasn't listening, right, to what these young people are creating. I got 4 interns this year that I don't truly understand. And all the interns itself have always worked through with, right? I've always found itself, right, that they've been great in terms of actually being managed tasks. But it's the first batch of interns where I'm realizing over here that these young people, they have ambitions beyond what is my task for them. They have ideas and creativity and things itself they want to begin to create, right? And I always think in my mind, goodness gracious, you're crazy, right? But I realize as an educator, there's actually, right, only 3 main things I must do for them. My job is not to tell them that they are crazy. My job is, number 1, to allow them to heal from their past hurts so that they can begin to see the possibility of new beginnings. To give them the tools so that they can be able to build possibilities for themselves. And lastly, to believe in them so I can trust in the possibilities that they create for me.